All right. So yesterday, my dear friend Jessica Tarloff said she wishes Donald Trump would have won in 2020 because he got stronger after his loss. Here's what she said.
I look back to the 2020 lines of argumentation about, why we needed Donald Trump out and what Joe Biden could provide. And it was a safe pair of hands. And I believe without COVID that Trump would have won re-election. And I wish that 100%. He had. I wish we were done now because he, like Ursula, got stronger in those 4 years. And so I hate that we gave them 4 years to take a sledgehammer to the country.
I actually get her point, but it pales next to a far bigger realization that they really didn't mean it when they said Trump was an existential threat. After all, apparently, they could have weathered a second term in 2020. And here I thought Trump winning would destroy the world.
This administration has shown it will tear our democracy down if that's what it takes for them to win.
This has been a life or death fight for the fate of our democracy.
This is not just an election between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. This is an election between Donald Trump and democracy.
The gravest threat to American democracy right now is Donald Trump.
Open your eyes, America. Open your eyes. We are teetering on a dictatorship.
Oh, the horror. Minorities in chains, gays in concentration camps, women playing basketball. And yet now one of the left's most thoughtful voices says we would have been better off if he won? I haven't seen a reversal like that since Bruce Jenner traded his Wheaties for a Wonder Bra. But Jessica claims Biden's victory gave Trump 4 years to plan, which makes sense only if you finally admit Biden's safe pair of hands couldn't operate a pen, let alone a country, because you assumed he would lose. She says that by beating Trump in 2020, Trump got 4 years. But doesn't a victory give 4 years to the winner? In a sense, she's saying Trump won 2020 by letting the Dems take over. But regret over winning? That's weird. You don't hear me saying, wow, I wish I didn't crush my late night rivals. Now Colbert has the free time to do actual comedy. Or, I really wish that girl hadn't said yes to me when I asked her out. Now all those other women I rejected have time to lose weight. But I get it, because really, I've been saying the same thing for a while. Joe Biden was the worst halftime show in history. Mm-hmm. You had Trump 1, you had Trump 2, you had this terrible halftime show with Maroon 5. And now we can't wait for the second half to resume. There you go. Good-looking kid, huh? See, when Trump lost in 2020, it was our intermission, where the opposition returned to remind us of how awful they are. And in case you forgot how bad the Biden years were, here's a joyful recap.
We finally beat Medicare. Visit vaccines.com.
Joan, Shingang, Shipments,
Are we topless at the White House?
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? What can be unburdened by what has been.
The total initiative.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
Good to see it. So did those 4 years suck? Does Joy Behar in the woods? Now, do I wish that all that happened? No, of course not. But we did learn lessons we should never forget. The biggest one, how the media and Dems colluded to give us 2 cover-ups in one. The first was about Biden's moderate beliefs. The other, his competence. We found out Biden was a fake moderate with a brain that contained more plaque than Mr. Ed's teeth. Yet they denied it. His inner circle, the Dems in general, the media, even the libs who now openly talk about Biden's failed brain were running the scam back then. Here's a great before and after.
There were a number of references to Biden's cognitive abilities, notably calling him a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with poor memory.
But this, in my view, was either very poor judgment or a naked hit piece.
Remember when all this with like, oh my God, I can barely keep up with him. He's sharp, he's on point, he's alert. He had no business being in the White House. None. No business running again. None. That was insane.
That's our media. They put a Mr. Magoo in the driver's seat, then acted like someone else gave him the keys. And of course, there was their surrender to the woke, which Biden's senility exacerbated. But in time, America clearly had enough. Those actions led to 2024, allowing Trump 47 to rise from the ashes, as did common sense, national pride, and of course, and most importantly, water pressure. Now, every morning when I take a shower, I feel like I'm being peed on by Tyrus. Anyway.
I'm going back on vacation.
So maybe we needed that horrible time to reelect Trump, because without those 4 years of manufactured chaos, we never would have gotten him. And all those jokes about Kamala and Joe. So yeah, I'm with you, Jessica, which is great. Finally, something you and I can agree on. Usually we're bumping heads, or at least I'm bumping my head into your knee. Let's welcome tonight's guest. Whatever it is, he's got a cream for it. Chief Medical Officer of the Wellness Company, Dr. Drew. He looks like the guy who brags about his neighbor having a pool. Comedian Adam Hunter. She was the inspiration for the Q-tip. New York Times bestselling author and Fox News contributor, Cat Tip. And he's made more old ladies moan than the cancellation of Murder, She Wrote. Former NWA World Champion, host of the Planet Tyrant podcast, Ira.
I can always tell when it's him because he's so proud of it.
Do you know what was ingenious? And I mean, we've talked about this. It was like 3 acts of a movie. The first act was him winning, second act losing, third act winning. He avoided the sophomore slump. That always happens.
He did, but he also the protagonist was in a crisis.
Yes.
It looked like he would not make it out. And then all the lawfare and all this stuff, he's never going to get out of this. And then he does. Mm-hmm. It's a miracle. But does Jessica really believe the 4 Biden years were good? Is that what she's saying?
No, I don't believe it. I think she's just trying to block it out. and I think what she was saying is if Trump had won, we'd already have a different president.
Oh, I see. Yeah, right.
Everything would be better. But she's assuming that it would have been a Democrat.
Right. And also back in 2020, it would have been Russia. He would have been just in the quagmire of the psyops that the Biden years exposed.
Yeah. And you know what else? And I hate to be grim about this. If he had won re-election, he probably would have been assassinated.
Ooh.
I have to say, because the way the energy of that was going, it was like we almost needed the 4 years to let the crazy people simmer a little bit. Speaking of crazy, Adam.
Yes.
You don't have to comment on my last point. Where would you be if Trump had won in 2020? Not on the Capitol building at January 6th?
No, I didn't have the right mullet. But no, I try to get my little daughter to like Biden, but she just doesn't like vegetables.
No.
But here's how you know. First, listen, my daughter, I told her to do the dishes, right?
Yeah.
She's 8 years old. She puts away one dish and goes, "I'm fired." Right? And I go, "You can't fire yourself." She's like, "Why not? Biden did." Which just shows you how, my point is, the guy fired himself. Like, he actually, he stepped down. He tripped down. But and people are still covering for him. Like even Nancy Pelosi was like, "Oh, he did a lot of good things behind the scenes."
Yeah.
That's what she said. I'm like, well, I mean, she's an expert at not releasing inside information. Come on. Okay.
No, he released a cabal to run the government.
Yeah,
that's what
true.
she liked.
You know, Kat, it would be an interesting. I'm surprised they haven't done a TV series.
Yeah.
Where, like, what if Trump had won and did a whole, like, what do you call those alternative factual fiction, historical fictions? Like what the world would be like. What do you think it would be like?
You know, I think he would still be to a large extent involved in the Republican Party.
Yeah.
I know, crazy idea. But I don't think that he would say, even if he wasn't formally involved, I mean, he was still so involved when he wasn't president. So I don't think it would just be as simple as, okay, new Republican in, whether he was president or running, who doesn't listen to anything Trump has to say.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think that.
But they would have had
case.
a Democrat. I think she's thinking it'd be so awful there would have been a Democrat in 2024.
Maybe. I don't know. I just think, again, they just did it so badly with Biden. The one thing I do disagree with you on is I actually do think that Joe Biden was and is a moderate.
By now.
I think he's always been one through his whole presidency. He was just, I mean, he just wasn't mentally capable. So he had other people around him who were more extreme who were making these decisions.
Yeah. That's a fair point. I agree.
Right? Like, do you guys think that he knows what non-binary is?
Right.
Ask him to explain non-binary during his presidency.
Yeah.
I truly don't think that those were his beliefs. I think that he was being told that was what his beliefs were.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Tyrus, what do you make?
He forgot himself.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it.
Literally.
Literally and figuratively.
It was a lot of effort for him to remember what he believed in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know?
I know he believed in the Easter Bunny.
Yeah, that's true. Wasn't it great seeing Nancy Pelosi in a mask by herself?
Yeah.
Those were the days.
Yeah, only in front of the camera.
Yeah, in front of the
She wasn't getting her hair done with a mask on.
No, she wasn't.
No, you know, it's funny because a lot of Democrats like to do that. What if he would have won? Well, if he would have won, we wouldn't be in the situation we're in now because the woke wouldn't have been born. Socialism wouldn't have been born. All of the propaganda and all of the ridiculousness that was spread. And they learned in the Biden vacancy when he was president that they could, the lesser and the more extreme could rule. All they need is a front man. They gave birth to the audition for senator, the AOCs and people who have absolutely no business in those type of jobs, but as long as they can read the script, we can get them to do what they want. So had he won, we might have had a Democratic president, but it would have been a Democratic that every one of us would have went to sleep the night and been fine with.
Yeah, it would have been a normal person.
Yeah, so him not winning gave birth to what we're dealing with now. There are no Plattners, there are none of this stuff if if that administration didn't get in.
What would they have done without January 6th?
Exactly.
All right. Well, we must move on. Boy, this is an exciting show.
All right, thanks for watching. Check out my new podcast, Hanging Out with me, Sean Hannity. The big interviews, the debates you won't get anywhere else. Like and subscribe for new episodes every Tuesday and Thursday.